I want to know what's the deal with duality. Because if you say that there is no source for the unwanted, then why does it appear in as much detail to the human senses as the wanted? So,
because all of it is necessary for the figuring out what you want. Because contrast is necessary for focusing. If you don't know what you don't want, you can't know what you do want.
but if it all comes from one infinite source, and that source is all life, all love, all good, how can its opposite appear in the human?
Because you have the ability to focus on all life, all source, all good, or not.
But where does that ability come from?
It is in the human experience that you find ways to block the light. This is really good. This is the question that we've had for all of you for a really long time. Why do you do that?
But how
Why do you do that? Why do you do that? When source is flowing, why do you do that?
How can I do that? If I'm only what my source created me to be, how can I do that unless source is doing that?
Because you have the ability, you are an extension of that which is source, but you come into the environment to explore, to take thought beyond which it has been before. So the reason that source would come forth in the likes of you is because in exploring the contrast, there is enormous value. You see, the very premise of your question is that there is no value in contrast.
Yes.
That's the premise of your question. And we'll be all right. How can there be expansion without contrast?
That was one of my next questions. Can we use another format to expand from without the use of duality consciousness?
Nope. Deal with it. So you're telling us just because you have trouble focusing, you want everything to be shifted around so you don't have to think.
I know, tapioca
so that you don't have to focus. In other words,
Tabasco sauce in my pie, I know.
Why does there have to be something I don't want? And I have to use the discipline of focusing. Wouldn't it just be better if there was just stuff I wanted? Source, you're pure positive energy. What's the deal here?
Yeah.
Why don't you just be pure positive energy? And why can't I just dwell in pure positive energy? And we say, because then there could be no expansion. If you do not have something that gives you reason to ask for more, there is no more. That's really big. Your eternalness, our eternalness, all depends. It all hinges upon this premise of expansion. We're not making fun of you. These are the most well-spoken questions on this subject that has been confounding humanity from the beginning of time. And there is nothing more worthwhile to talk about. So we're not making fun in any way. And we appreciate your stubbornness. It's just so far off track.
Well, okay, setting stubbornness aside.
We can see how someone would say that to their mother. Mother, why do you present options to me that I wouldn't want to choose from? But that's a very narrow world that is not needing to expand that much in that moment. But when you are a genius creator who's come forth into an environment and you want to be stimulated to new ideas, contrast is just the best thing. You know it. You wouldn't want to be in a kitchen that only had 2 ingredients.
Well, I think I'm missing something because, okay, infinity precludes anything but itself.
But what does that mean?
There's
What
no
does that
room.
mean?
There's no room for something other than the infinite one. If life is infinite,
then that's a concept that cannot be. That's a concept say it again.
that
Infinity.
Yes, infinity precludes anything but itself because it's filled all space, all possibility, all potential.
Then we're all done and we cease to exist in this moment. It's been great. But we're all now done because infinity is finished.
Well, what is purity but one thing, not two? I mean, doesn't the Tao say not two, just one? One infinite one is one. One consciousness, one life.
One consciousness with one thought?
No.
Again, we're done.
No, infinite thoughts, but infinite thoughts of life and love.
But how do you find life and love if you can't find something? How do you do that? How do you know? How do you define something as wanted if there is not anything against which to measure it?
Well,
and do we have to call that a duality, or could we call it variety? Could we call it options?
Well, when it's life and death, Life, that's duality. That's the is
But
and the isn't.
But again, no, it isn't, because there's life and life. There's life and life. There's only life and life. There is no death. There's life and life. But there's life that you're allowing to focus here and now, and there's life that you're not allowing to focus here and now. You can't stop your life from focusing.
So there is just life.
So if there is just life and there is just source, are you satisfied?
Yes.
Good. Really good. We've enjoyed this interaction immensely.
Then why do I perceive what you're saying? There's no source for the unwanted. Why do I perceive the unwanted if there's no source for the unwanted?
What we mean by that, you are the source of the unwanted. Your thought is the source of the unwanted. You're beating the drum of unwanted is the source of the unwanted. You're getting the momentum going. You're activating the thought, which is the source of the unwanted. But what we mean when we say there's no source of the unwanted is that there's no source like as in God's source. In other words, there's this source of well-being, but there's not a source of evil. There's God, but there is no devil, is what we mean. Man is the creator of all that is unwanted, and you explore it here in this physical environment. But we want to come round to helping you understand that in that variety, there is only value. So you want us to say, well, then if there is only value, then nothing is ever going wrong. And we'll go along with you on that. We want to say that too. We want to say that too. So let's proceed then. There is one. So there is one thought. Let's call it God. And then let's assume that all of us are part of that, so we are still one. And now we are exploring, and we are focused upon pure positive energy, so we're still all one, and we're still good from the standpoint of what you're talking about. And now a part of that consciousness is born into a physical experience. And you got to ask why, because if I was pure positive energy, then why would I expose myself to any contrast? We say, because from that broader non-physical perspective, you knew that the more would be accomplished by the exploration of more variety. In other words, you knew that by exploring the physical, which is the leading edge, by the way, this physical place with all that is here is the leading edge. So as you're exploring this variety and coming to yet new conclusions, that which you want to call source, which is the one, has expanded. So you're right. Source is pure positive energy, flows here, flows to you, you're exploring, and source becomes more as a result of what you have explored and discovered and concluded and decided and wanted. But now the duality is introduced by human, by physical, who is not now able to keep up to speed with the expansion that he has accomplished. Then your premise sort of sounds like it says, well, then we shouldn't have come, because if we can't keep up to speed with the expansion, then we've introduced an unnecessary duality. We say, yeah, you did, but it's not one that you can't overcome, and it's not one that didn't give you benefit, because that duality that you are unhappy about caused an expansion of the universe, which you now have the ability through focus to come back into alignment with the one about. And you're right, it does feel really good to come into alignment with the one. But the one that you're talking about is the one that came forth into the contrast. In other words, the contrast is not a bad thing, it's just choices, you see. That's really what we're wanting. When we say there's no source of badness and there's no source of darkness, we really mean that. There is a source of contrast, and the contrast is all about expansion. We think it's the judgment that you are making about what the contrast is that is making you want to call it a duality that you don't want to embrace. And we promise you, you want to embrace everything about this physical experience. You would far rather have exposure to a lot of variety for the purpose of your and our expansion than you would want to just be born into a feathered nest. Humans don't know that when they haven't gained control of their thoughts. If you haven't gained control of your thoughts, if you don't know about vibration, if you don't know what your guidance system is telling you, then sometimes you do want to sort of close yourself off in the neighborhood that has walls around it, or in a neighborhood that has a gate up that you need a code to get into. Or you might want to just hang around with people that you trust, or put your children only in the schools that you believe are the safest. In other words, if you don't know about your ability to navigate among all of this contrast, by striking a vibrational pose that equals your point of attraction that brings you only what you want, then we can see why you would have a problem with there being things that you don't want to see. But When you come into alignment with this knowing, then the variety thrills you. It never frightens you. It inspires you. It never makes you feel guarded. It uplifts you. It never makes you feel like you need to manage it or defeat it. When you come into that wholeness, is a better word than oneness, into that wholeness of who you are, the wholeness of who you are and the wholeness of the frequency that you are, then you become like source. You get such a synergy of pure positive energy going that anything that doesn't match it bounces off. And that's why that which is good is dominant. So dominant that the word dominant doesn't even do it. The word dominant's not big enough to describe the dominance of well-being.
Thank you. I have one more. Yeah. I had a specific...
You're a lot of trouble. You are a duality we didn't count on. You made trouble, and you evoked from us the clearest answer we've ever given about that. It's a lot of trouble. But you evoked from us the clearest answer that we've ever given. So we deem it worth it.
Thank you.
Do you?
Yes.
So how are you going to feel about trouble that comes to you? You're going to say, no, you should not be here. You might cause me to expand. And I was happy. I was happy in my nest.
Yeah.